From the Windows, Doors, and More studios, your one-stop shop for all your kitchen and bath needs. The Pat Miller Program. Whoa, 92.3 FM and 1190 AM. Depend on it.
And welcome back, everybody. Glad that you're with us, just like always. And here we are in another part of the broadcast with our good friend from Washington, D.C. As I always say, Mrs. Miller's favorite part of the Pat Miller Program. From Washington, D.C., Real Clear Politics, it's Philip Wegman. Philip, on Saturday, good afternoon to you, sir. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Pat.
Always. So I was just telling some people here in the building that last week I had to record my program ahead of time because I had two funerals last week and I had an event up in Shipshewana that I had to get to, and so I did my show, had it all done. I'm thinking, I'm driving home, like I've really, conquered the bull. And after I gave all the reasons on my program last Saturday, recorded 2 days before, that it should not be a conviction of Donald Trump, it came out. They've convicted Donald Trump on all counts. Have you ever had one of those oh crap moments?
I think the Trump campaign certainly had one because now, until November, the Democratic Party, including President Biden, is going to refer to Donald Trump as the convicted felon,
right,
who is the former president. I mean, this is not something that I think a lot of us were expecting. Yes, we knew he was on trial. Yes, we had followed the evidence and the proceedings. But still, it seemed almost as if this was one precedent that wasn't going to be broken by the Trump-era politics. That's out the window. We're in uncharted territory right now.
No, and that's exactly right. Let me ask you, you understand a lot about politicking, and you've seen it all over the country, and you've seen it in Washington, D.C. How possible is this? I mean, if Donald Trump, if none of this is resolved by the first week of November, how probable is it that Donald Trump, in fact, could be elected? And I go back and forth. Some people are going to say, look, I want to support the guy, but it looks like he's on his way to jail. I want to do this, but this. I want to do that, but. And then others are going to say, okay, that's it. We're putting him in no matter what. He will be a pain in their neck, and he'll do it from prison if he has to. I don't know how I fall on that.
Yeah, it's murky right now because certainly we've seen the former president just have a boondoggle of a campaign fundraising day. He brought in close to $70 million,
yep,
I believe, in the week following. I think $35 million of that was within 24 or 48 hours.
Right.
So he has certainly activated his base. Republicans who are with him, they've doubled down. Republicans who are on the fence, this is going to move them off of it. They're going to be much more inclined to actually go pull the lever for the guy this time around because of what they see as unfairness and politically motivated lawfare on Democrats' part. But where this gets confusing, though, and this is why it's always important to note that polling is a snapshot in time. It doesn't necessarily tell you what the future is going to look like. It's a snapshot in time. We've seen Biden improve in the polls in some of these swing states like Michigan. Now, that's not determinative, but it does show that the battleground is shifting. Folks who are with Trump, they're still with him. Folks who were sort of Trump hesitant, they're more inclined to get on board. But, independents and moderates, they might not feel the same way as their Republican counterparts, right? Like for the casual voter who isn't watching this trial day in and day out and who isn't really staying on top of all of these allegations, for them, they might just see convicted felon, call it a day, pull the lever for Biden.
I'm with you, but at the same time, I think there are some people who would sit there and say, okay, to pull it for Trump, all this has made this so iffy, but to pull it for Biden goes against everything that I believe in my core. Would they rather go for the third party candidate? Could this conviction actually, it's going to hurt Trump a little, I think, but rather than hurt Trump, help Biden, will it hurt Trump but actually help the libertarian candidate, the independent candidate?
We saw Bobby Kennedy Jr. make an overture to sort of conservative voters and independents who have a distaste for this conviction when he argued in a social media post that this was driven by politics, that it wasn't equal justice under the law. And immediately, Democrats started attacking RFK Jr. as a puppet of Trump. In fact, you had the Democratic National Convention come out and say that and go after RFK. I think that you raise a really good point, though. This is a three-way race. I don't think anyone seriously thinks that RFK Jr. can run away with it. It remains to be seen whether or not he is actually competitive. But it wouldn't surprise me if there were some voters who, they want to cast a protest vote because they don't like what they saw in New York. They don't like what they see coming out of the judicial system, but they're not ready to go all the way for Donald Trump. That wouldn't surprise me. And I think that, with RFK Jr., he's kind of the unpopular kid at the table right now because Donald Trump would very much like to see him get out, and so would Joe Biden.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know that it's in his DNA for Donald Trump to just jump out of the race. Somebody said to me the other day, Philip, they said, well, yeah, they go, but somebody else that's also been very prominent throughout the campaign in editorials on Fox News and elsewhere. What if Donald Trump says, okay, you're putting me in jail, you put me in prison, maybe, okay, have at it. But guess what? There's another Donald Trump that's just as conservative as I am. I don't know that people are ready for nepotism.
Yeah, so the 2 points here. First, I think you're right. Donald Trump Jr. is very charismatic. He's very quick on his feet. In some ways, he doesn't have the same profile as his father does. But I think that we're going to be hearing about Trump Jr. in the, decades and years ahead. Maybe that's something that the Democrats hate. Maybe it's something that Republicans love. But I've seen this guy up close, and I've talked to him on numerous occasions. He's a very good retail politician with the sense of a stand-up comic. Republicans love him. With regards to Trump sort of stepping aside and letting someone else take the nomination, I'm not certain that the Republican National Convention is going to set up that way. I don't think the machinery is there. I think you would also have a revolt among Republicans who they really want Trump Senior, not his son. But the thing to remember about all of this is the judge has set the sentencing date just 3 or 4 days before the convention. But Trump is going to remain out on appeal until the appeal process is finished. And the expectation is that appeal process is going to take months. And it could take a very long amount of time until even after Election Day. So there's little to no chance that we're going to see the former president in an orange jumpsuit anytime soon. And the other reason why I think that Trump is in this more so than he was previously is because now he's running for his freedom, right? If he wins, we're going to be in this unprecedented constitutional showdown between the federal government and the state of New York. If his conviction isn't overturned on appeal. I think that obviously, it would take a lot for New York to put a sitting president in jail. So I think that with this one, Donald Trump cannot commute his own sentence. He can't pardon himself because it's a state. But, he has every incentive to win.
This is a wild shot here, okay? We now are in the beginnings, in the opening throes of the Hunter Biden case. What are in your opinion, that's all I'm asking, what are the odds that somehow the sitting president of the United States could be brought into the melee of everything that is the Hunter Biden case?
Yeah, there's questions of whether or not, President Biden will actually be involved in that trial. It doesn't look like he will be called, but it's difficult for Democrats, right? You have the White House and the DNC not quite taking a victory lap, but also saying, hey, Donald Trump was convicted by a jury of his peers. This is the process working. You can't question the judicial system and say that the result was rigged. That's almost verbatim what we heard from the president last week. Well, those are going to be, bitter words for him to swallow once again if his own son is convicted.
Yeah.
And that raises, an immediate question for the president, and that is, would he pardon his own son? We've heard from this White House that that's not something that he's considering, but the case against Hunter Biden is pretty open and shut. He was on banned substances when he purchased a firearm. That's a felony.
Which was proven.
The case against Donald Trump is more complicated because, yes, there are these 34 counts of him falsifying business records. That's normally a misdemeanor, but it got bumped up to a felony because of this theory that it was in furtherance of another crime like election interference or campaign finance violations. So,
which is insane, by the way, to just say, well, let's just bump it up to a felony. Oh, okay.
And Pat, you know me, I don't read law. I'm not a lawyer, but the lawyers that I talk to, including some who are not at all charitable to the former president, they'll admit that this is unprecedented. It has never happened before. It is a novel, new legal theory. And that's why a lot of these Republicans are saying, wait a minute, like this is not just the system working. This is the system being weaponized in that you went out of your way to almost try and manufacture a new standard for this guy so that you could get him. Whereas with Hunter Biden, it appears to be a pretty open and shut case.
Yeah. Well, his is a pretty open and shut case for. The Trump case is less open and shut by virtue of the fact that they can't really come out with the one thing that he's guilty of. They can't even name it.
Yeah, the Judge Michon there, he said that all that was needed was to prove that these 34 payments were made. So you check the misdemeanor part of the equation, and then that it was in furtherance of some other crime. He did not require the jury to explain what the other crime was. And that's, I was talking to a lawyer who told me, look, if you are going to convict a former president, something that's never happened before, at least the American people should know very clearly what it is he did and what he's being convicted of. This should be a case that doesn't set new precedent in terms of the law. It should be something that all of us understand, rather than a new novel legal theory. And I think that is what has driven a lot of the Republican reaction. You now have some Republicans saying that they ought to do to Democrats what they allege Democrats did to Trump. And they've some Republicans, not all, have embraced this race to the bottom theory where now they want to go after their political opponents in the court of law, not just in the political arena.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the stuff that you hear, like in elections in the South 50 years ago, where a guy running for the county seat somewhere, and they start talking about, well, he bought booze for a party for this guy and blah 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 and yada yada, just so that he would help him get elected and all that. This is that. I mean, this is almost just like that, except now because it's Donald Trump, they've made it this incredible felonious action and everything. I mean, Trump can't burp that it's not a federal offense. It's like anything he does, that's it. That's the highest level of what?
Well, and let's be clear with Trump, he has benefited extraordinarily with the legal schedule. The case in Georgia, it has been delayed. That's another state case. But the two federal cases against him for January 6th and the classified documents, those have been delayed beyond the election.
Yeah.
And so, he has been very lucky thus far. Honestly, Pat, the New York case was not seen as the most serious case against him. That was the case that was brought by Jack Smith on the documents and on January 6th. This one was seen as sort of not a sideshow, but certainly not the main event.
Yeah, this was not the main thing on the screen for the movie theater over the weekend. This was like the third thing, or it was the second cartoon before the film.
Not a bad way of putting it.
See what I'm saying? Philip, as always, my good friend, I appreciate you. And let's hope that by the time we talk again next Thursday or next Saturday, that we will have more things in place and more understanding of where this all goes. Sentencing has been moved to what? Is it September the 11th?
Sentencing has been moved to July 11th, I believe.
July
or
11th.
Whatever date is 3 days before the start of the convention.
Okay, yeah, perfect. So, yeah, it's just going to be, this is like a soap opera.
It really is.
I mean, it's just like a soap opera. So we'll have you back next week for our next edition of As the Stomach Turns, and we'll go through all that. Philip Wegman from Real Clear Politics. As always, you are the highlight of the day. Just ask Kim Miller. Thanks for being with us today, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Pat.
And I always do appreciate Philip being with us. Busy schedule that they've got there. A normal day, you'll find him on his motorized bicycle zooming all over the nation's capital, getting to different meetings, to the press meetings, and to the press room at the White House. I'm glad he always makes time for us. Back with more straight ahead. Pat Miller with you on this Saturday here at WOWO 92.3 FM and 1190 AM.
This is the Pat Miller Program on WOWO 92.3 FM and 1190 AM and on the WOWO app.
Hey, welcome back. It is the Pat Miller Program. Very glad that you're here. So, a senator in California is trying to make a name for themselves. In the state capital of California, little young girls are being sold into sex slavery. In California, it's okay to shoplift or to solicit sex from a minor. I mean, that's where this is going. Both are misdemeanors, which means they're hardly even worth prosecuting. That's why less than 10 miles from the dark dome of the Capitol, the state's inferior copy of the U.S. Capitol, lies the Blade, B-L-A-D-E, where children are sold into sex slavery. One study estimated that there were 13,000 victims in Sacramento, the state's capital, in the past few years. That included an estimated 1,600 minors, some as young as only 12 years old. And the numbers are incomplete because many will never be freed, since the perpetrators, those who sell and solicit them, continue to be protected by California's political elites. Little girls are being sold outside into sex slavery within driving distance of the Capitol building, with the complicity of the legislators comfortably and profitably running the state on the inside of that building. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. By the time Senator Susan Eggman took to the Senate floor and blasted her party, the pro-crime contingent had successfully managed to undermine the child protection bill yet again, one more time. It's disgusting. More coming up. Micah Beckwith, we talked to him coming up right here after the bottom of the hour. This is Pat Miller with you on this Saturday here on WOWO 92.3 FM and 1190 AM. And welcome back. Glad you guys are with us. Hey, listen, from me to you, thanks for carving out a little bit of your Saturday to spend it with us here noon to 3. And remember, if you can't catch all of a show and you'd like to go back and re-listen to either the entire show or just a part you were listening to, the way you do that, just go to WOWO.com, click on the Pat Miller Program, and you will see there the list of my podcasts. Every show, each hour is a separate podcast. So, for example, if I've had a guest, you really like him and you want to find out more, go back and listen again. For example, I'm getting ready to talk to Micah Beckwith, and Micah is, in fact, a candidate for lieutenant governor here for the state of Indiana. I'm sure you'll want to listen to this one or two more times. Have your friends listen to it, and we will help you do that by having the podcast ready. They will go up as soon as the show's off today. In fact, he's sitting right now on the Newsmaker line. Micah, good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Pat, thanks for having me.
Yeah, now listen, I met you the other night. We had met before. I'd had you on the program a few times on my weekday program. I think that's the first time you and I mean, I've seen you face to face, but it's the first time we've actually been on a platform together, just a little meet and greet, get together. You seem to be doing a lot of meet and greets as you're getting ready to try to run for lieutenant governor for the state of Indiana.
Yeah, we're traveling all 92 counties, and it's going great. We have a lot of momentum. And you said it well. We've got to get it in front of as many people as we can, and specifically delegates. And I love the process because we're actually educating Hoosiers on the delegate process, and the delegate process is very important. But most people, even in the Republican Party, don't quite understand the background or the why behind delegates. And so it's been a really great opportunity to educate Indiana on our system of government here in the state, and it's going really well.
You say a lot of people don't really understand. There are some really curious things, and the lieutenant governor is one of them. But there are 3 officers that are selected not in a primary, because we've already done the Indiana primary, but they are selected actually at the state convention. And for Republicans, I think we've got like 1,813 delegates, something like that. And the delegates are selected, in primaries. But then the delegates come together at the state convention, and they determine who the candidates are going to be. Let's see. One of them is for lieutenant governor. There's 2 more offices. Do you remember off the top of your head what they are?
Yeah, there's actually 5 total offices, but the way it works is so you'll have the Secretary of State, the state treasurer, and
right.
then the state comptroller. They get nominated every 4 years, and then we stagger the delegate or the convention. We'll do that election the first time, and then 2 years later we'll do the offices of lieutenant governor and attorney general. So that's what's up this year. Is we only have the offices of attorney general and lieutenant governor that we're voting on as delegates. So those are the 5 statewide that we call them, and we nominate those statewide in the convention. That you, the listener, if you're voting for delegates every 2 years, that's what you're voting for them to do in a primary. You vote for them on May 7th. You click, I want these group of delegates to go down to the state convention and vote for a really good statewide office, and that's how the process works.
One of the things, too, that I find curious, and I think we're one of only 7 states that select officers like that in convention and not in primaries. In the multitude of states, they do it all at a primary election. I kind of like the way Indiana does it, because I find that if I select the people that are going to be at the convention, and they, after hearing all the candidates and going through 1, 2, or 3 ballots, however many it takes, they are the ones that will select the candidate. I think there's greater accountability to that. And if there's one thing that we need a little bit more in government, I think it's accountability.
Oh, 100%. And actually, the beauty in a convention is that you could be a multimillionaire and you still don't have the upper hand necessarily on somebody that could just raise $50,000 to do it. And I've actually made the pitch and the call that we make governor, U.S. Senate, and all U.S. House races, as well as the 5 statewide, all of those should be at a convention. Because, right now, if you want to run a primary around the state for governor, that's it's probably 5 million people, Republicans, give or take, in the state of Indiana, that you've got to market to. It's very expensive to market to 5 million people that could potentially be voters.
Right.
But if you wanted to do a governor race at a convention, well, now you just have to market to 1,800 people,
right.
which evens the playing field for the normal average citizen to say, you know what, I might be a good governor, and I want to give it a shot. And I think that's where our system is hurting us right now. We've set it up to where the rich thrive and the normal people can never get into the system and serve. And so I really would love to see that go to a statewide nominating convention for all of our statewide and federal offices. And I think that will radically change Indiana for the better, I believe.
Well, and as you said, if you take the amount of dollars that are spent even in primary elections, it's a horrific amount of money. And what percentage of the people, even the houses that you knock on their doors, the people that see your TV ads, the people that hear you on the radio, what percentage of them will actually be out there to vote? But if you take your time and if you find out who are the 1,800 who are going to be delegates at a convention, here's one thing that you can be pretty well sure of. All 1,800 of them will vote, and that's kind of important.
Yeah, that's right. We had about 23% voter turnout in this primary, I think statewide this past May.
Right.
And that's really low. But you're right. When you vote for your delegates, and especially if the governor or Senate races and the House races now are relying on those delegates, you can bet your last dollar that those 1,800 people are showing up. And then it also makes delegates a lot more important. And guess what? You have a really good chance of being able to win delegates in your community. It's sometimes there's not even enough people to be delegates. And so if you just sign up in January, you win by default. And it's a great way to get involved for the average person to dip their toe into serving our state in the political arena. And it's a phenomenal process. I've been a delegate since 2016. I love it. I'm always going to try to do it every convention, just because I think it's such a great process that teaches us about representative government.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is very important if you're going to be a continued delegate. If there's ever somebody who's running for an office in the future named Pat Miller, feel free to say no. In fact, just not only no, but heck no. Just don't even go there. Micah, let me ask you this. Now, in state after state after state, the office of lieutenant governor in Indiana may not look like it does in Canada, yeah, sure. Kansas may not look like it does in Texas. What is it that's unique about the office of lieutenant governor in the state of Indiana?
Yeah, so we have one of the most robust lieutenant governor offices in the country. And by that, most lieutenant governors are the heartbeat away from the governor office, right? So we know that kind of as the vice president is the president. It's okay if something were to happen to the governor, and God forbid anything, like that happens. But if that does happen, and it has, we had O'Bannon who died, and Kernan stepped in for him. And I think whenever that happens, that's part of the lieutenant governor's responsibility. In Indiana, constitutionally, that's part of the process. You're also the president of the Senate, so you oversee the debate and just kind of the Robert's Rules of Order in the Senate. And so that's really kind of the constitutional aspect of a lieutenant governor in Indiana. But what makes Indiana so unique is statutorily, the legislature has given the lieutenant governor a lot of authority over certain agencies, which would be Secretary of Agriculture, the Office of Community Rural Affairs. That's called OCRA, otherwise referred to. Housing, tourism. You're the chair of the Civics Education Commission for teaching our students and next generation true American history, American exceptionalism, and constitutional literacy. And so there's a lot of really important roles that the lieutenant governor plays. And I'm not just running for lieutenant governor because I think I can be, a voice to defend liberty. I do think that. I have been that. But I'm also running for lieutenant governor because I have the agriculture background. I have the business background. I have the educational background. I teach civics and constitutional literacy for a high school and Christian school in Carmel. And so all of these things, my leadership background in running the Hoosier Leadership Series under the Indiana Family Institute, my policy work with the Indiana Family Institute, and helping to navigate legislators down the right path of good legislation. It's literally like this office, as I look at it, it was like the Lord has been preparing me for all of the little strategic gifts that I've been given exactly to fit this office right here. And so I saw this and I said, man, this is a great way where I could use my gifts and my talents to serve the people of Indiana if they want me to. So I threw my name in the hat, and here we are.
Now you live in the Noblesville area.
Yes. Yep. Noblesville. Yep. Correct.
And I know that I'm being very careful with this because my brother lives there. And you have two children, and his wife is in fact a doctor down there, a pediatrician, and so we ought to compare notes later. I don't know if my sister-in-law is helping to take care of your children or anything like that.
Okay.
But she's terrific. Her husband, my brother, he's a nut job. So just I'm just telling you right now. You saw how loony I am, but they are great people, and she's there in the Noblesville area. What is it that you think? Because you being a campus pastor there with Life Church in Noblesville, you're teaching at a Christian school, but at the Christian school you do teach in an area that's not like every other class. You teach constitutional literacy, and you do that, which means the Constitution, it's not a foreign object to you. You understand what it is and why it is. One of the things, and let me just preface it by saying this. I am a huge Mike Braun fan. I think Mike Braun will be a tremendous governor. In fact, I look for the governor's office to become slightly more conservative than it has been for the last 8 years. I just believe that's what's going to happen. You're a small business owner. Mike Braun obviously was a business owner, and I think that brings a certain perspective. That brings the Mike Trump insight into the State House for people to see that, and I think Mike Braun will do that. I'm going to have a conversation with Braun at some point because I was a little surprised, and I'm not saying this for any reason here, not picking sides, but for him to come out and say, here's the one that I want for lieutenant governor. That's not how our Constitution in the state of Indiana reads. Let the delegates go and to do that and to pick. And I think really the way you win those voices is by what you've been doing. You're running around and doing meet and greets in every county that I can mention around here and meeting people. Sometimes if I ever drive down I-69 and look out into a field and I see a farmer and 2 cows standing around and a guy's talking to them, I figure it's probably you. And you're out there having a meet and greet with Joe and the cows. But that's how you do it, I think. I don't want somebody to become lieutenant governor just because the governor-elect says this is who I want. She might be a tremendous person. You said in the event I saw last night that you think she's a tremendous lady and might do a good job as a lieutenant governor. Then you gave us some of the reasons why you thought you perhaps were going to be a little different, perhaps a little bit better. But I just don't think I need any governor stepping beyond the scope of our Constitution to say, look, I know what the Constitution says, but here's what I want. I don't think that's how it should be happening.
Yeah, so let me just give a little bit of a defense to Mike Braun and some of the governors of the past. I mean, this is the system that we've allowed it to be for the last 35 years. So I don't hold anything against any one of those candidates that were running for governor. I think would have all done the same thing, and I wouldn't have blamed them because it's just the way we've allowed it to get in Indiana to where we believe, and it's not right, but I'm just saying just the perspective of the lieutenant governor in Indiana has become an office that is not a constitutionally elected office that the people own. It's really become the secretary of the governor. And I've actually had conversations with legislators. I was talking to a state senator a few weeks ago, and he literally said, your job as the lieutenant governor is to do the will of the governor, whatever that may be. Whatever he tells you, you do it. And I pushed back on him. I said, then why do we have a constitutionally created office that people vote on?
Yeah.
I said, if you want that to be the case, then change it. Right?
Yeah.
Change it and make it the secretary, and just in the case of the governor dying, there's a heartbeat protection, and that secretary becomes the governor. But change it, and that's what when I ran to for when I started this over a year ago, I wanted to force the conversation in Indiana. I wanted to force the conversation as to who does the lieutenant governor belong to? Do you belong to a politician, the governor, or do you belong to the people? And I see it written very clearly that it belongs to the people. That's why we have the delegate process, who are elected by you, the people, and then they go down and they vote. Now, they've always voted on the lieutenant governor over the past, however, 30, 40 years, but it's always one vote. It's always one person. You have no choice, right? And so that's the establishment saying, well, delegates, you can have a choice, but really you don't have a choice. You have to pick this person.
Right.
And then what I'd like to offer, too, is just look back over the last 20 years of Republican leadership. Mitch Daniels, Mike Pence, and then Eric Holcomb. Now, I'm not trying to blast any one of these guys. I think they all have their strengths and they all have their weaknesses. But Mitch Daniels, I think, did some great things for our state. But remember, he threw Becky Skillman under the bus. I mean, everybody knows that. Like, Becky started pushing back on him, and he basically ousted her from the lieutenant governor's office. Now, they can't fire them, but they can basically say, well, I want you out because I appointed you. And then Mike Pence had the same conflict with Sue Ellspermann, and then he kicked her out. And then Eric Holcomb has thrown Suzanne Crouch under the bus, and that's no secret. I mean, they don't get along. He didn't even endorse her for when she was running for governor. And I started thinking about it. I was like, why do these men think that they can treat these women that way? And it hit me. It was like they think that they are their secretaries.
Yep.
That's why. And
they own their position.
That's right. So that the moment these women spoke up and said, well, I don't like what you're doing here, Governor, and maybe we should think about this. They said, how dare you get in line? And when they didn't get in line, they said, well, I'm going to find a way to get you out. And I think, unfortunately, we've allowed that to happen in Indiana. It's not Mitch Daniels or Mike Pence or Eric Holcomb's fault necessarily. It's just we, the people, should have said, nuh-uh. That lieutenant governor is our voice in that executive branch, too. And, Governor, we want them in there to give you a second perspective. They're a leader just like you, but they're there to offer perspective on behalf of us, the people. And so that's what I'm trying to change in Indiana, is our perspective on the lieutenant governor. I think it's really working.
Well, listen, a couple of things. I appreciate very much last night getting to know you a little more than I did. I'm going to try to get Julie McGuire to get onto the program at this point next week. The convention is, if I'm remembering, is Saturday, June the 15th.
That's right.
So that's when it all comes, that's when all the pushing and shoving is over with, and that's what it is. I am sure, just based on what I heard last night, that you have every intention of becoming the Republican nominee for the lieutenant governor. Should you not, are we counting on you to step up and to be the voice to support whoever it is that's running for the Republicans in that office?
Oh, without a doubt. I told Mike Braun, even when I got in this race a year ago, I said, hey, I respect you. If you win, you got my full support. And I told him the day after the election, he called me, him and I talked after the primary. And I said, Mike, I am Team Braun all the way. I think you're going to do a good job as governor. And I really believe that he will. So no matter what happens, I'm giving the people of Indiana a choice. And if they don't believe I'm the best choice for that office, then I will not be offended in any way, shape, or form. I actually will probably be a little bit relieved, to be honest with you, but because, I see this as a little bit of I got the skill sets and I'm ready to go on day one, absolutely. But it's a burden. When you carry leadership like this and even traveling the state and hearing the frustrations or the problems or the heartbreak of Hoosiers because their government isn't doing what the government should be doing, it weighs on you, and it's a heavy burden for leaders to be in office. And so I know it's going to be a sacrifice for me and my family if we step into this role. If God opens the door, we will go. But if the people of Indiana say no and the Lord doesn't open that door, then that's okay too. And I will get behind Mike Braun and Julie McGuire, as full force. And I'm Team Republican. We got to make sure more than anything that the Republicans hold the line against this woke, radical, leftist Democrat Party they become Marxist is really what they've become. And so it's important that we're unified. But we're vying for the starting lineup in practice right now is the way I look at it. And so we hit each other hard in practice. We go hard and passionate in practice. But then once that starting lineup's picked and we go out, unified, and whether you're a starter or not, you're part of the team, and so that's my perspective.
Yeah, and coming out of that, the whole team pulls together. We've been talking to Micah Beckwith, who, of course, is one of the candidates for Lieutenant Governor, State of Indiana. We'll find out after the state Republican convention on the 15th whether it's he or Ms. McGuire who ends up being the candidate for that office. Listen, all the best to you, Micah. Thank you very much for your time last night. It was very good to be with you, and let's get together and talk again after this is all over. Okay.
Hey, thanks so much, Pat. Appreciate all you're doing, and keep up the great work up there, and onward and upward.
Thank you, and we'll be right back straight ahead, folks. This is Pat Miller here on WOWO 92.3 FM and 1190 AM.
This is the Pat Miller Program on WOWO 92.3 FM and 1190 AM and at WOWO.com.
Hey, as we head to the top of the hour, Marlon Stutzman will be with us at the start of the next hour. But just a quick reminder for you, this comes from the Fort Wayne Animal Care and Control. This is that warning that we get every year, and yet we still hear a number of pets that suffer because we just don't pay attention. Look, it's summer, it's hot. As best you can, keep your pets inside in a controlled temperature environment. If they're outside, they have to have water, they have to have food, and they have to have shade, and we've got city ordinances that mandate that. Also, be smart. Don't walk your dog in the middle of the day. Do it in the morning or do it in the late afternoon, early evening. Do it when it's a little bit cooler, okay? Do that. Monitor heat stroke signs. Dogs pant. If they get into heavy panting, dry or bright red gums, thick drool, obviously vomiting, diarrhea, something's wrong. Take care of your pets. You say you love them. Let's show them that we do. After the break, Marlon Stutzman, straight ahead, right here on WOWO 92.3 FM, 1190 AM.
Podcasts by Federated Media.